And so when I was given the opportunity to take on downtown design and grow it, it was always my dream at that point to make sure that it wasn't just commercial brands that we were importing into the UAE, but that we were going to grow our own homegrown industry and start exporting UAE design talent to the rest of the world. You show your work, you stand behind it. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect or you're comparing yourself to Campana Brothers.
You don't have to.
You don't need to. Like, you stand behind your work. There needs to be recognition for work that is coming out of India, Africa, China, the Middle East, and it needs to be properly advocated for and represented on its own merits, because you know, you can't just plonk it next to something that's been designed by someone from New York, for example, who's grown up with or lived in an environment that has art education and this and that and the other. You know, these are completely different environments.
Yeah.
It needs to be seen in the right context to be appreciated for the right reason.
Hi, Valeria.
Hi, Shad.
How are you?
Very good.
How was your week?
Another busy week.
Another busy week. But we're happy about that.
Yeah,
Right.
we love busy weeks, right?
love
Don't
busy
we?
weeks. I'd rather be busy than just sit and not have anything to do.
Yeah, I'm with you, 100%.
Valeria, today we have a very special guest.
We
with
do,
us.
we do.
She's not only a dear friend, she is the editor-in-chief for Harper's Bazaar Interiors.
Yep.
And she ex-director of Downtown Design. And she's a mentor for many people.
Yeah.
And she is, I would say, a talent scout. Can I say that?
Yeah, you could,
Yeah.
you could, definitely.
And I actually did a small research. Is it Rue or is it Rue?
Oh, it's definitely Rue.
Rue.
And it means so many things depending on where I travel. In England, Rue is regret. In France, people are like, why are you called street? What a strange
Yeah,
name.
you're right.
Rue.
Yeah.
And in Sanskrit, it actually means the soul.
Oh.
So, you know, I choose obviously the
Number
the,
six.
the last
The
one.
last one.
Yes.
You're a very, very interesting person, obviously, you know, from London to Middle East, and a very long journey, and you come with a lot of background and package. You know, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and you know?
I mean, I could take that, you know, in a deep existential way, but I'm just going to give you the practical background.
Professional.
Absolutely.
answer.
It's a professional podcast after all. I'm not going to tell you my entire life story, although it's very interesting. So obviously I was in London doing various things. I was a photographer, I was a writer, I wrote travel books. You know, I've always been someone that's been searching for something to get my teeth into, and ways to express my creativity and ways to explore the world. And so when a friend of mine who had moved to Dubai came back to London and said, why don't you come to Dubai? And I said, well, where is that? In Saudi Arabia. And he said, you are such an ignoramus. He had to get the map out and show me.
How long ago was that? Like
2001, 2002, a long time ago. So he said, look, don't take my word for it. Come to Dubai and make up your own mind. So off I went, you know, completely naive, came to Dubai, which was very much under construction at that point, and thought, okay, I don't get it. But every person that I met was so ambitious. There was such an energy about Dubai, which I think it just gets stronger and stronger. I mean, I come to Dubai now, 25 years later. That energy hasn't changed. It's very much there, and it comes from the people, actually.
Yeah.
And it's a land of opportunity. I know that sounds cheesy, but actually it's very much true.
Yeah.
If you come here with a little ambition and you're willing to work hard, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do. People will help you. People will support you. So I did, you know, I did a bit of photography. I carried on doing a bit of photography, and I thought, well, perhaps this isn't the place for photography. At that point, I was shooting fashion and architecture. So I started doing a little bit of writing.
Yeah.
And I ended up being an editor on Hello Middle East. Don't judge me, please.
This we didn't know.
Okay. It's not something I talk about a lot, but it really helped me to cut my teeth as a professional. It got me very involved. It got me very networked. I worked on Emirates Women, did the kind of journalistic stint. And then I had a baby, so I kind of took a little time off, and ended up going in to ITP for one job and being offered the editorship of Harper's Bazaar Interiors.
Wow.
And I said, but I don't really know that much about design. I know about design in the sense that I've always been obsessed with architecture, interior design, etc. But, I didn't feel like I was a really knowledgeable person. But it's amazing how much you learn when you find you have an interest for
100%,
something,
yeah.
And the passion was there. It just became ignited by this amazing challenge to develop and grow a magazine title in a region that was being built as we were doing it. My first issue was called Made in Arabia. And the idea was that I was going to go out and find all of these incredible talents, that were working on original design at
talents,
that point.
yeah.
Exactly. So off I went into the wilds of the United Arab Emirates, and all I could find were 5 designers, of which you will know Al Judelusa, Khalid Al Shafar.
Yep.
Oh gosh, now my memory's not serving me correctly. But we covered in those issues people like Taha Asad Bakhtiari.
Nice.
There were all kinds of talents that we unearthed who were really kind of making their first foray into making. So not just, I've had a great idea, someone else is going to make it for me, but actually really getting involved in the technical side of design. And we're still really close with these people to this day, and to see how from just fledgling piece in a magazine and some confidence in themselves, which I think you need, especially if there's no trodden path already, if there isn't an infrastructure for an industry already, to go out there and say, I'm going to be brave enough to go and design a table and make a table and try and sell it.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot of brevity to do that.
Especially back then, yes.
100%. It's not the same if you go to Europe, for example. In those days, like you're talking about 2005, 2006, in Europe, you've obviously got all of these...
big names, manufacturers, obviously, for centuries.
And you've got systems. In those days... Becoming a designer, there was no education for that here. There were very few schools or classes or whatever streams in universities that were helping people to really develop their skills in terms of product design. And then if there was, what are you going to do with it when you've made it? Right? True. Very few places to show that work. So, I became, part of that ecosystem, I think, along the way. And so when I was given the opportunity to take on downtown design, which was very small in those days, and grow it, it was always my dream at that point to make sure that it wasn't just commercial brands that we were importing into the UAE, but that we were going to grow our own homegrown industry and start exporting UAE design talent to the rest of the world. So... that's always really motivated me.
What were some of the challenges that you faced now when you're talking about downtown design? What was some of the challenges that you felt that this is something that we have to acknowledge and this is something we have to work on? And was there any key elements that you think was the foundation for the success it actually is today? It's really starting to grow. It starts to become very popular, and people coming from outside to come and see it,
it has grown drastically.
So was there any big challenges?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The whole thing was a challenge. I mean, being an editor, and editing things on a 2-dimensional page is one thing. Being an editor of a 3-dimensional environment is entirely another. If you make a spelling mistake in a magazine, whatever, if you make a mistake on a floor plan or something, and it's 3-dimensional, that shows. So there was always this sense that I was having to pick up a very new skill. And in those days, it wasn't about selling the fair, it was about selling the region. because people were like, well, why do I want to Dubai? People, didn't even really know Dubai that well, or they were listening to kind of third party, not particularly positive editorial coverage in places like the UK or the US. So they were like, well, why do we even need to be there? So I had to sell Dubai. I had to sell myself because, of course, if people have never showcased work in the Emirates, they're trusting you that what you say you're going to deliver, you will deliver. And then thirdly, you've got to deliver it. You can't be like, oh, we're going to do all of these amazing things and then it's rubbish. You have to give them an experience. So it was very much, you know, me really banging on doors at that point, doing, you know, kind of almost cold approaching brands and hustling and going to all the design weeks and saying how brilliant Dubai was and et cetera, et cetera. And that is really, you know, how I got people. And in the first year that I ran the fair, we were in the design district. It was a brand new space. It was a brand new tent. It was like a whole blank sheet, basically. And I somehow, I don't know, I think I just worked super hard, managed to double the size of the fair in my first year.
Wow.
We brought on an architect, Aboud Malak, who was also one of the OGs in Dubai, to help us design a really beautiful environment for the fair. And so it wasn't just about, look, here are these sexy brands from all over the world, but also it was a smart edit of what I thought people in the region wanted to see and would want to engage with. But also it was an experience that we've all been to design fairs, right? Where you trudge around lane after lane and it's loads of stuff you're not interested in and you have to find the stuff that you like. We wanted to take that pain away because it is painful to do and create something that was really beautifully edited and
more
curated.
Fun for the visitors.
Yes, have a good time, you know, throw a big party, all of those things. People want to be, and it's Dubai, so they want an experience. True. You don't want static content in the fair. You want
the best of the best.
You want it, the best of the best, but you want things that are going to entertain people, to engage, because the region was so young in terms of design. You can't sit there and intellectualize about design and expect people to sit and take notice. You have to make them take notice. You have to connect with them on a visceral level. And that's, I think, really the success of the fair, that we, by no means it was a smooth ride. It was a very bumpy ride from,
definitely,
you know, 3,500, excuse me, square meters all the way up to 13,000 square meters, which was what I grew it to when I left the fair in about 2018 or whatever it was. Sort of around COVID.
COVID times.
But growing it, maintaining the quality throughout, making sure people came to the fair, because it's that whole thing of, you know, brilliant, you've got a great fair, but if nobody comes, then what's the point? You know, that's the litmus test, isn't it? If you build it, they will come. I know, but you also have to give them a little push.
Because I feel that something happened with Dubai after Expo. I feel like a lot of people in Dubai is engaging, going into, you know, the design and the future.
More than they used
to do, you know. Compared to when I lived in Italy, for example, and design week and the design Salone di Mobile has just, you know, was so well grown. Obviously, it's much older, you know. So, but was there a very big interest for design around 2017, 2018?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was, but it wasn't as broad an interest. I think people wanted more choice. Choice was so limited when I started that job, in terms of the brands that were available, the brands that were visible. People didn't know what was out there. So being able to lay that choice out, market it, promote it.
Building foundation.
Yeah, and actually it kind of worked the other way. We helped to seed the interest and grow the interest.
Yeah.
That's very important, because that's what I feel, that there was a foundation that was laid. I came 2019 to Dubai, and I felt like there was a foundation that was sort of built up, and then, you know, when it came more people to educate, and there has been a journey of education.
Yeah.
So that foundation was really there, and that's where my question came in, because I
Yeah.
really wanted to understand how did you go through that whole journey of educating people,
Yeah.
and you know.
I mean, that I was doing from the moment I started the magazine, because, and even, you know, in a sense, I mean, really it was when I started the magazine, because we wanted to help people understand the value of design. What is design? Because in those days, the problem of copies was really, really bad. So brands didn't want to come and showcase pieces because they felt like there was so many copies on the market, especially with, you know, really popular brands at that time like Cartel, etc. So the whole mission really was to educate not only consumers, but like trade professionals, architects, interior designers, on what is out there, how to make better choices, why you need to make better
And
choices.
how to educate your client.
Exactly,
in the
and what
end.
is the
Yeah.
value? Like, why do I need to spend £200 as opposed to, or two, you know, 2,000 dirhams as opposed to 500 dirhams on a chair?
Yeah.
Because, well, maybe your client might want it to last longer than 1 year. So what are you paying for? It's helping them to understand the value of that, of investing in design, and also to help educate people that are, you know, maybe working in the industry on the other side in terms of students or, you know, makers in the kind of maybe a better way or better choices that they could make in terms of producing pieces of design.
Right.
You know, so education, and it continues to this day.
Yeah.
Always, and valuable craftsmanship.
100%.
100%.
So, COVID hit, and post-COVID, you started your new venture, which is Design East, right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
jumped into sort of familiar venture, but new venture in London. Tell us a little bit about this.
I mean, I think I was absolutely nuts to do this when I look back, because it was COVID.
Yeah.
I'd been nursing this idea for Design East for some time. You know, I actually still have the little sketchbook where I was like sketching the brand and scribbling. And I'm a very visual person. So it's kind of, you know, when I'm thinking about creative ideas, I have to draw them. It's somehow helps my brain connect better.
Yeah. Very
And-
designish.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I definitely. And so I started to kind of work with the idea. It went through so many different iterations. And when I'd left, I got approached by the director of Al Serkal Avenue, Velma, who I'd known for some time. And she said, well, what are you thinking about doing now? You've left the Art Dubai group. And I said, well, I've kind of been nursing this idea. So we talked about it, I think, for almost a year, back and forth, back and forth. I was kind of trying to evolve the idea. And then suddenly she said to me, right, well, it's Art Week in 3 months. If you're going to do it, now is the time. So, I
Okay.
mean, if you're going to lay down the gauntlet for me, I can't resist a challenge. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just do it. And so it became this platform to support artists and designers from the global south, which sounds very broad and very vague. And it's deliberately that, because it's not a concept that I want to be set in stone. Much like us, designers, the world, everything evolves. So you don't want to be that kind of slightly stoic, boring concept 10 years down the line, because
Right.
you haven't been able to grow with, you know, the way the world is changing so
Yeah.
rapidly.
And limit yourself. Yeah.
100%, but also be relevant and also be able to, you know, maintain your agenda throughout and not be held back by it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we did our first show at Al Serkal with the support of the Al Serkal family, which they've now become. They gave me an enormous space, which was incredibly daunting.
I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very nice event.
600 square meters. Now, it sounds a bit ridiculous because I had done a fair for 13,000 square meters, but this was me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think because there was very little time and so much to do, I didn't have enough time to really freak out before the event or get stressed. It was more like, go, go, go. That was just, my mind was, you know, eyes on the prize. So we got, I think, about 17 different installations by 17 different artists from across the global south. And we focused on textiles. Now, why textiles? Well,
Why textiles?
Well, you know what? I just have such an affinity with textiles. My grandfather was a textile manufacturer back in Uganda in the 40s. And being an Indian person of Indian origin,
It's rooted in you.
It's rooted in you, absolutely. Textiles mean all these different things, but also they're extremely universal. So you don't necessarily have to be a design bod to connect with textiles, because you make a decision about textiles every day when you get dressed.
Absolutely.
So it's a subliminal thing. And also, you know, textiles were the very first form of visual narrative. So it's something that is uniquely capable of expressing the nuances in culture, in identity, in aesthetics, in community, in all kinds of things.
100%. Yeah.
And so, you know, I didn't want to do something. People think textiles, oh, it's flat. No. I mean, it can be so versatile. It can be so three-dimensional. And it can be so moving. So we did this thing. I don't even know how we put it together, because a week before the show, the guy that was going to do the production let me down. So I was kind of sitting in this giant space.
Talking about challenges.
Okay, so how do I do this? Because we had textiles that were going to hang from a triple height ceiling to the ground.
You had a huge, massive installations in there.
Yeah, they were massive. But
I purchased something from that installation.
You certainly did.
I did.
You did. Actually, you got...
What did you get?
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. I don't remember the artist, but it's a beautiful blue, huge.
So it's Ghislaine Sahli
Yes.
from Morocco. And she is really incredible, because she uses waste from the sea, so things like plastic bottles, etc.,
Yes.
that get washed up on the shore. And she hand dyes silk thread, and she wraps it around, and she creates almost this three-dimensional textile piece that kind of comes out of the wall that is kind of evocative of coral, but also of internal organs, and but it's just incredibly
Yeah, very
powerful. And it was these pieces, you know, we had a piece by Samia Halabi, very famous Palestinian artist. Nobody really knew that she had done textile work. It was really beautiful. We had pieces by Zach Ove, who is from Trinidad. His work was amazing. We had all kinds. It was very diverse. There was kind of phygital, I hate that word, but anyways, physical, digital, phygital. I mean, it sounds like a disease, but anyway, it was, you know, being able to really tell the story of different cultures and people through textiles. And what was amazing was that people came and like people cried.
Aww.
And it was moving, because some of it really touched where, you know, it would evoke memories of your home back in Palestine, or your home in Saudi, or the life that you once had, or the history of your people.
Through textile.
And
Very
it's
powerful show.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting you say that you had 3 months. When you started Design East, I was sitting down and I was like, even though I know you, I was like, how have I not heard about this? Because it felt and seemed so well put together.
Yeah.
And when you released the show, it was like super powerful. Super powerful.
I mean, I just think it was very much my intention not to talk about it too much. I wanted the show to speak for itself, and I wanted people to make up their own minds. I didn't want to tell people what to think.
Yeah.
It's really important. I think it's very difficult when you're talking about collectible design stroke art, because it can be quite intimidating when people within the industry try to over-intellectualize concepts. And it's a very elitist way to look at things. It's saying, you know what, I'm really clever and I understand this. You don't understand it because you don't speak the same language as me. And I didn't want that. I want to democratize art and design.
Amazing.
Because it's not just for people who, A, understand it, and B, can afford it. It's for everybody. And especially now, as we go into a digital age, it is the one thing that can't really be replicated by AI. You know, it is quite often when you're talking about artisanal work, it is a woman in a village in the middle of nowhere making something with her hands in the same way that she has done her community have done for centuries. That doesn't need to be intellectualized. That needs
At
to
all.
be no.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is where the emotion really came into it. And
It's history, it's tradition, it's craftsmanship, it's all in one.
And that
Absolutely.
opens up, that's genius in my opinion, because that opens up so many other doors for people that are going around and saying, no, art is not for me because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
You know, and it opens up the interest
Yeah.
for people and the interest to learn about what it
The
is that
whole
happen.
different spectrum.
Because I'm sure that a lot of people actually would want to have a nice art piece, but they don't know, okay, what can I
Where do you
invest in?
start?
Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, I don't know anything about it. So it's a beautiful way of actually opening up for everyone to say that, you know what, you don't need to know anything about it. But
No.
You know?
And I think that's why we focus on, at DESIGNEAST, we focus on the global south. Because I also think there's been too much of a tradition of people coming from the West and telling us what they think is good about what we do and what isn't. And I think that needs to change. And I think it is changing. I think there needs to be recognition for work that is coming out of India, Africa, China, the Middle East, and it needs to be properly advocated for and represented on its own merits, because you know, you can't just plonk it next to something that's been designed by someone from New York, for example, who's grown up with or lived in an environment that has art education and this and that and the other. You know, these are completely different environments.
Yeah.
It needs to be seen, you know, in the right context to be appreciated for the right reasons. And I also think that if it's done that way, people in those countries that don't necessarily feel comfortable about art will connect with it. You know, I think
Yeah.
we just need to
through a
step
different
out
form.
of that, all of that kind of the institutional side of art, which I personally don't love. I understand why it exists and it has value. But for me, I mean, I find it kind of off-putting occasionally.
we're going to start calling you Mother Teresa of design now.
Oh, please don't do that. I'm far too naughty to be called that.
Look, a lot of people see you as a mentor, you know, and you work with a lot of young people and a lot of young creators. Is there any specific ones that you could tell us about that you have maybe a memory of, or someone that's flourished under your wings?
Some talent.
I mean, I tell you most recently, I mean, obviously, it was really important to me to give voice in the magazine, in Harper's, to emerging talent. And when I launched Editions in 2017, I wanted Editions to be a showcase for regional creators, makers, artists, collectives, etc. At the time, I got a bit of pushback because within the organization that I was working for, that there's no way you're going to find enough people to fill, you know, this space in downtown design. We should just bring international galleries. And I said, absolutely not. We don't want to bring international galleries. We want to give a platform to people who are doing interesting stuff in the region.
Right.
And you know what? Because then I made it my mission. I was like, right, I'm going to do this now.
I'm going to find them.
We're going to find them. We had designers from Iraq, Iran, Palestine, from Tunisia, from obviously, you know, Lebanon. And we had so many makers from the UAE. People were saying to me, I didn't even know there were this many people making stuff in the UAE. And it was so personally rewarding for me to be able to help, you know, people like Ahmad Bizazo. He was the first time he ever showcased was at my fair because I believed in the work. People who at that point didn't feel confident enough to show their work. And I said, absolutely not. You show your work, you stand behind it. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect or you're comparing yourself to Campana Brothers or some.
You don't have to.
You don't need to. Like, you stand behind your work. And you have to push people sometimes to take that first risk, because in doing it that first time, you realize that you can. And then you go and you fly and you do really, really well. And when I did DESIGNEAST, I met just a wonderful girl, Miriam Al Hamaids from Qatar. And I fell in love with her instantly because she is incredibly humble. She comes from an amazing background. Her father's one of the most famous artists in Qatar. And she was making these really cool graphic-led hand-woven rugs that kind of depicted the change that she saw in Doha. She really responded a lot to support and help. And then we took her after Dubai. Dubai was a big success, that opening, more than I ever could have dreamed of. And we got offered to do Nomad in Capri. So we took her there. Yeah. I then took her to London Craft Week to do a show at London Craft Week. And we did a collaboration with Jaipur Rugs. So I got 5 artists from around the Middle East. And we worked with Jaipur Rugs. Yep. We went to Aspura, the little village in Jaipur.
I remember that, yeah.
Oh my God, that was just amazing. So I brought Mariam along for that. We went to meet the weavers. We ate with them. We danced with them.
Amazing.
We wove with them. We swapped stories. We exchanged gifts. That was hilarious. Because, of course, they gave all the designers gifts that they had made, which were all really beautiful. Designers gifted them things that they were like, what on earth is so just everything was so wondrous to them because they've lived in a tiny village. But that was incredibly rewarding. And I've seen how well Miriam has done now. She is everywhere. And it just gives me it makes me really happy to be able to have been a part of that. Journey. I don't do it with any agenda. I think I probably should. I'd be a lot richer if I did it with agenda, I'll tell you that. But it is just something that my mother always said to me, you'd be a really good social worker. And I said, well, no, I don't have the patience for that. But actually, it's always kind of run through everything I do. That actually, I have a genuine love for people. I like to connect with people. And just, helping people get on just becomes an extension of that. So, it's been amazing.
So you worked with so many different people across the countries. How do you keep this craftsmanship and creativity and you make sure that it's not superficial? That it doesn't become superficial in a way? I mean,
at its heart, working with craft is so non-commercial. But it's really important that when you're working with the craft community, that you really acknowledge the people that have their hands on the product in terms of making it. The recent collaboration that I did that was on show at Downtown Design between Noura Al Sakal, who's an artist from the UAE, and Atelier Talasin, this incredible weaving studio in the foothills of the Atlas Mountains in Marrakesh. I mean, that's a perfect example of the right way to do it, I think. Because Noura was one of the artists we took to Jaipur, and she had never worked with fibre before, and she was just so enthusiastic about it. She loved the whole experience. And she said to me, if there's ever a chance to do this again. So when I was working with Atelier Talasin and we were going to do something for the show, I said, I can think of the perfect person. Because Noura's kind of comes to things with a very fresh and unique approach and perspective, definitely. And she came to Morocco, she met the ladies, we all sat around a table and discussed, what could we do? And she went away and did a sketch. But she wanted it to be, and this is something I always encourage, it to be a dialogue between her and the weavers. Not something that she wants and is imposing upon them, and all they do is make something, send it off, and they get no credit. In order for it to be a real collaboration, there has to be, that you have to allow the makers to have some kind of interpretation of the design, and for them to feel like they are part of the process, and that
a perfect marriage.
Absolutely, but they're also then honoured for their contribution. This is extremely important because there's too many stories of designers, they are making huge amounts of money designing beautiful things, and the people who are actually making them, you know,
left
they
in
don't
the-
have the same
left in the-
experience,
Yeah.
let's say.
Designers taking their shine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with doing, having a brilliant idea and seeing it through. And I think that's important. But
To
I
give
think
it credit.
Yeah, but to
Yeah.
give credit to, and craft needs to change and be more democratic in that sense. And I think it's slowly happening because it's a response very much to the digital age and we saw this, didn't we, during COVID, where everyone was at home, like baking sourdough and learning how to knit and doing all of these
that
things.
was me.
Yeah. And we were all we were all learning to do things, by hand because our lives were becoming dictated by digital. Like we could only communicate with other people through digital means.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to feel of the earth again. And so I think that we can't lose that now that, everybody's forgotten COVID even happened. We can't lose that gift that COVID gave us, which is to remember where things come from.
Right.
It's really important to do that.
Interesting how you are working with different regions, not only Middle East, as in say UAE or Saudi Arabia, but also outside Sri Lanka and so on. When you're curating collaborations, how do you make that happen? How do you go through that whole process of
Working with different cultures.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ethnicities, different regions,
it's amazing. It's easier than you would think because design is a universal language. So you do everything visually. If somebody doesn't understand, you show them. If somebody can't conceive, you draw it.
Yeah.
And you know what? What is the most warming thing is it doesn't matter if you speak different languages, you live in different worlds. Human beings have similarities that help you connect across those boundaries.
Absolutely.
When I was in Marrakesh, it must have been only a month ago, and I was in this village in the mountains with these Amazigh women. So we've all heard of Berber rugs, right? Berber.
Yeah.
Berber is actually a pejorative term. It's a colonial term imposed upon the Amazigh people. But we were there with these Amazigh women washing this hand-sheared wool in the streams, laying it out on the rocks, carding it, spinning it by hand. Honestly, these women and I could speak a bit of French, a bit of Arabic, and, we did a lot of kind of gestural, gesticulation and laughing about things and sharing food. And I don't know, there's almost something more honest about that kind of connection because you can't fabulate with words. You can't just manipulate the other person with words or what you're wearing or how you look. It's the most honest interaction you can have.
100%.
And it was so, I encourage anyone, you can go actually and do this experience at Atelier Taliesin because they do this for people who want to come and experience it. It grounds you, let's put it this way. And you remember that, there are much more interesting stories to tell that come from the connection of two disparate cultures.
Yeah.
Right? When you allow those things to unfold naturally and you realize how much you have in common with somebody who lives on the other side of the world in a village with very little.
Yeah.
And you're coming from this part of the world where you have so much. Right? And then it also reminds you that maybe it's important to continue to work with these communities to make sure that these crafts stay alive.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that we're representing these people in the correct way. I think that's crucial.
It's finding out how we have one, as you said, international language of design and even craftsmanship in art.
Yeah.
And we're, in the end of the day, we're very similar. We are much more similar, right, than we're different.
Totally.
100%.
Yeah.
It must give so much inspiration and so much thought from a designer's perspective when they see something or when they see a background or when they have an experience like this, and it must give so much value to a material or to a process.
Right, when you know the value, how long it took and how long they were making it by hand.
We would love both of us to come with you on the next
Yeah,
trip.
I tell you
Can
what.
you make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, we can make that happen. I'm going to be doing a big trip next year in India, so I'll invite you.
Definitely.
Amazing.
India
And I
is-
I'll be there.
really want to lift the lid on what is going on over there because it's exploding in terms of craft and collectible design and art.
Would you want to go on a silent retreat?
Oh my gosh, I've done it before.
Oh no.
Can you believe? Twice in my life, I've been forced to shut up. No, this is
Yeah.
me. You guys know me.
Yeah.
I can just, you know what? I'm known actually among my friends. Just wind her up and leave her, and you can leave the room and come back, and she'll still be talking. But actually, I went on a silent retreat in Sri Lanka. Most amazing experience of my life because it forced me to stop
Is it
babbling. and
Dwarika Resort? What is it? What was
to be
that?
honest, it was a long time ago. I cannot remember what it was called. But it was like,
I can't imagine you on a silent retreat.
Oh my God. I did that. And also I once had an operation on my vocal cords. I used to sing. I was in a band. Please
Oh
don't.
wow.
Yeah. I've
So
had
many
so
things
many lives.
opening up today.
Yeah,
I can
no,
see
no,
that.
many
I can see that.
lives.
I can see that.
A bit of a rock.
Yeah, a little bit of a rock.
Yeah, but
girl.
I didn't sound like this then in those days, in my late teens, early 20s. I had a nodule removed from my vocal cords. And so I couldn't speak. It must have been because it wouldn't heal about 3 months. I could barely speak at all. Can you imagine? I couldn't speak at all for about 3 weeks. And then for the rest of the time, I could barely speak. Can you imagine me?
wow.
No.
I was so zen. I was zen for the longest time. And I now do yoga and meditation every single morning. And it is the most wonderful gift you can give to yourself, even if you do a silent retreat, because especially if you're creative.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to tune out all the outside influence and tune into yourself. And I think as a creative person, as
We
both
need
of you
it.
are, I think it's a
Yeah.
really important
we
thing to
definitely. I tend to do wind down. I need to wind down me as a person for sure. Like sometimes
Yeah, to
I need to
recharge.
just, close my phone, not reply to any emails, not speak to anyone, and just be in my own zone. You know,
It's important.
art
Very
is actually
important.
very very much a place I go to when I want to zen down. I want to calm down.
I mean, there are lots of different ways of meditating. You can swim in the sea, you can take a walk, you can, listen to music. It's ways of reminding yourself that all the other voices are other voices. And, you can sometimes not even hear yourself above the din of what's going on around you. Your demands on your time from your husband, your children, work, your
Yeah.
friends, whatever, the news, all of these things. So it's important,
To listen to that voice.
I think so.
Yeah.
Talking about Sri Lanka and silent retreats and going over to craftsmanship. Traditional craftsmanship that we see a lot in the East contra the more modern way of, maybe thinking about sustainability or tailor-made for a luxury brand. What's your thought when it comes to, using maybe a more traditional way of craftsmanship?
Craft is challenging to work with. Luxury brands are doing it more and more, but it's hard. Like, for example, if you're producing craft-led textile, so you're producing a piece of hand-loom textile, that has limitations because it's limited to the amount of hours somebody can work on it. It's limited in size because the loom is only a certain width. And it's limited in materials because you want to encourage the people that are weaving to use something that's locally available and
Traditional,
sustainable.
yeah.
So these things are a challenge. Obviously, big luxury brands, they want to be able to sell something in huge numbers of units all over the world.
Sure.
So being able to help and encourage, for example, weavers on hand looms to produce stuff that actually is going to be demanded by luxury brands and a bit, use something that will be durable for a consumer, but then also manage the expectations of a luxury brand to say, well, this is small batch production. If you want it, maybe there's only going to be this number of things that can be produced in a certain length of time, right? So we were working with some people on a project in Sri Lanka, which I no longer work on, but they've taken it to new heights since then. And it's a company called Celine Textiles, based in Sri Lanka. And this woman's mother, Celine's mother, had set this initiative up as a social enterprise because in those days, when the war was happening in Sri Lanka, and there were no tourists, so traditional outlets for craftsmanship, like tourists buying stuff that were made by hand, just didn't exist anymore. So the women then were sent off to work as domestic workers in other countries in the Gulf, etc. And what happened when the women left those villages is that the fabric of the society would fall apart. You know, the men would go off, the kids would go feral, and it wasn't healthy for the society to not have the women there to be kind of linchpins in the society. So Celine's mother gave these women in the villages a hand loom, taught them how to use it, taught them basic principles of education and hygiene and all of these things that would help them live better. And then when we got involved, and my friend Robert that was working on the project, they were taught how to weave with all kinds of sustainable materials, banana fiber, cactus fiber, newspaper. And then the stuff that was produced, the textiles that were produced were then connected to the blockchain, which meant that, for example, people like Soho House in London that would buy something made with those textiles, there would be a little code on the back. You could scan the code and you can see every single person that was involved in making that, who they were,
amazing.
then how much they were paid, was it fair pay, etc., etc. So this transparency in the supply chain is incredibly important when it comes to craft, because it means that when you're buying something, you can really verify whether this piece is what it says it is, because there's far too much greenwashing going on in the world.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
people,
of course.
saying, oh, we're sustainable when they don't really know what sustainability means,
Well, you advocate a lot for sustainability. What is sustainability for you and for DESIGNEAST? How you implement it in all your, because as we were preparing for this podcast, you pretty much implemented in each and every of your businesses. So what is sustainability for you?
I think sustainability is, it's more than making sure that you're working on pieces or concepts that have the minimal impact on the planet, but also you're taking care of every element of the supply chain.
Right.
So who's working on it? How are they working on it? What are they using? Are they being paid? Are their children, at school? You can really penetrate quite deeply into these things. Being sustainable means so many different things, but ultimately for me, it means being really aware and taking responsibility for the choices that you make, because those choices impact so many other people.
Right.
Not just the planet, but, there's so many different elements of the ecosystem, including people.
It's a chain.
So,
Yeah,
yes.
it's definitely a chain, and that is.
But my advice is just educate yourself. If you're working in the design industry, I know there's a lot of pressure on people, downward pressure when it comes to producing projects that are in budgets, on time, all of these things. And it's not always easy to work with craft, but as much as possible, if there is an opportunity, I would say go and educate yourself on who's doing what in the region locally that can come and help you create a really unique element to your project, for example.
Sustainability starts here.
Yes, be local.
Yeah. Go local.
Be educated, work with people, use sustainable materials. I love what Richard Wilson's doing at Collab, because he is helping designers and architects to choose better materials that are made from all kinds of weird waste materials, and that are not as expensive as you would think. So I think educate yourself, make better choices, but also, be a part of the narrative. We try and tell stories about things that are sustainable, so it doesn't feel too much of a scary thing for other people.
I was going to ask that for someone that doesn't know where to turn to or where to go to educate themselves through this process as a designer in the market. Is there any?
I mean, I'd say, there's so much stuff on the internet. Go onto the United Nations website and it will give you a million things that you need to be thinking about when it comes to being sustainable. Go and speak to Richard at Collab if you're in Dubai. Educate yourself. And it is, we thank goodness for the internet, because if you want to know how to do anything, I mean, literally everything's on Google.
Exactly.
Literally everything. But also there are conferences, right? There are conferences all over the world. Go get involved with that.
Yeah.
Go and learn from others. How are other people doing it?
Yeah.
There are so many people who are trailblazers for innovation when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah,
Follow them on
especially these
Instagram.
days. Yeah.
See what they're doing. Nobody cares being copied if it's for the right reasons.
So we are slowly getting to the end, but I'm very interested in knowing more about Vision Now.
Yeah.
What is Vision Now, and
What is next for Design East?
So Vision Now kind of came about, but I was approached by this incredible, dynamic Chinese girl, Zizi, who said to me, I've been wanting to do this business for a really long time, and I've been looking for someone to partner with, and I think it's you. And I was like, well, what is this business? Like, tell me. And she said, look, there's obviously a huge desire for design brands to go out to the Asian market, to Chinese mainland primarily. And it's something that it's so hard to do. If you're an international design brand, you can't just rock up in China and do business. It works in a completely foreign way to the way we work everywhere else. From the language to the pace that they do business, to the social media platforms, to how they express themselves, to their, to their priorities and their value. It's completely foreign to everyone else. And so you need someone on the ground to guide you.
To connect, yeah.
It's a huge market. It's much like India. There are well over 1 billion people in that market. It's highly consumeristic, and they're high spending, and they want everything that's new, and they want it now. So you know how to deal with that kind of demand and churn of information. It's extremely challenging. But of course, I'm on one side of the planet with no real, I'm learning all of this on the ground. And Zizi has a team in Shanghai who help to really execute what design brands want. And there is, China gets a very bad rap politically, and I can understand why. But it doesn't mean that, we homogenize the Chinese people into one kind of political mindset, right?
Yeah.
No.
Because when I went out to Shanghai for the first time, I fell in love with the place, not just because, Shanghai is an incredible city, but everybody was they couldn't do enough for you. They were so friendly and so kind, and
but also artistic. It's a huge
so
design
creative
scene. I mean, it's a huge F&B scene as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as diverse. Like, it's the same. It reminded me of the weird kind of things that people thought about people living in the Middle East.
Back then,
Yeah. Oh, they just homogenized everybody into, their
One
idea
group.
of what Saudi was like. And, it just made me realize that everybody's the same. Again, we come back to this idea of let's not be so judgy unless we've actually been there and experienced it or know people from there. So it's been an incredible learning experience doing that. And I just feel very blessed to be able to, kind of make friends with another culture in that way.
Amazing.
I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Looking at your career, like looking back now, what would you say was your most fulfilling achievement?
Good question.
Oh, it's really hard, but I definitely think that opening the first Design East show in Dubai, when I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to do it. And it was better than I ever hoped it could be. And I had curators, international curators, coming and telling me, wow, this is great. And to me, I think you always have, it doesn't matter how successful you might have been in life at various things, you still feel a little bit like an imposter when you do something new.
Always.
So to have somebody that I hugely admire internationally telling me that they thought I did a good job, I was, slightly emotional at that point.
Very proud moment.
Yeah, I feel
You
like
should
a
be
proud
proud
mama.
You should be
Proud
you
mama
should
moment. You know how that feels.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You should be proud of yourself. I think you achieved a lot of great things, and there's a lot of people that looks up to you and gets inspired. So
Definitely.
Oh, I really
I'm definitely
appreciate
one
that.
of them.
Oh, bless you. I appreciate
sure.
that.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%.
So usually we have the previous guest would ask a question for the upcoming guest.
And the question was how different Middle Eastern design to the rest of the world is.
Yeah. I think that design in this region is very much an expression of the culture, which in itself is so incredibly unique. You know, what I love about living in the Arab world is that there's a warmth, there's a hospitality, there's a realness about the people. It doesn't matter if they drive a Bentley or a scooter, there's like this, you know, warm connection that you get immediately. And I think that does come through in the design. You know, it's often quite earthy and it's often authentic and it's often focused on their culture or community or, you know, things that you use ritualistically in life, you know, just icons of their culture. And I think, you know, that always stands out because it's still quite a young industry, but it's making a huge impact already. And for that, I'm very proud. Yeah.
So then that leads you to asking our next guest a question that they would reply to.
Any question.
Okay. And it has to be design related question.
Design related, ideally.
Has to be a design related question. Okay. What do you think is going to be the next revolutionary piece of design? So if you think of like the iPhone, you think of like AI, what is the next revolutionary?
Wow.
That's a good question.
Design?
That's a big question.
Yeah. Bam.
Answer that.
That baram bam would be the final of this amazing interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
for taking your
Rue.
time.
Thank you for
pleasure.
coming. Thank you for sharing
A
your
big
knowledge
inspiration,
with us.
and then we will wait for the tickets to India next.
Yeah, I'm on it. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for coming.